teach what we think we understand, and nobody's right and nobody's wrong. So take it away, Alex, if you're ready.
Well said, Mark. Well said. So the most important teacher that we've had is Aaron Tavakoli-Kesh. He's the father of modern plasma science. And so as such, this is a presentation of the Kesh Foundation Spaceship Institute. And as Mark has said, that we have been teaching in Brazil and Italy and in the Spanish community. And the results have been outstanding. We have a phenomenal teams have been formed and are forming, and this is going to be replicated in many countries around the world. It's just that we have to start somewhere, and for all the newcomers, the 3,000 hours of teaching are available on the archives at the Kesh Foundation Spaceship Institute, and you're always welcome to join and have access to that. And most of us don't have the time to do that. So we've been trying to put summary work together. And at least I don't have to do the disclaimer, and I don't have to do translation today. But as I said last week, this will be the last presentation of the Kesh Foundation Canadian Education Series. We are doing this in conjunction with the US education team and with the Mexican education team. In fact, this is a presentation of KFTV and the Spaceship Institute. And of course, I've mentioned Brazil, Italy, and the Spanish community. And of course, yours truly here in Canada. And so we want to welcome everybody here, because this is the Kesh Foundation Spaceship Institute Basic Understanding of Plasma Science. Today's class is PM-TICS. My name is Alexander. It is June 20th, it's 2021. And this is a presentation of the Kesh Foundation North American Plasma Education Series, which includes the North American continent, the US, Canada, and Mexico combined. This is the future, where we don't have the boundaries. And that's one of the things that is most difficult for people to understand with respect to the plasma science, is that it doesn't have any boundaries or limitations. And when you look in outer space, and you can clearly see that. And so what we've been trying to do is to figure out what is it exactly that we're doing on this planet. So we went through 21 classes with the basic teaching, and we started with terminology. If you don't have the right terminology, you can't communicate. And if you use the terminology in the wrong context, that is confusion in the communication. So we need to be very, very clear in our understanding of the terminology and use it in the proper context. And for a lot of people who are attracted to the Kesh Foundation through the Cups of Life, we covered basic ground there, and we discovered that there's a whole lot more to learn. And so we moved into the intermediate teaching and the advanced teaching, but these are all part of the basic teachings. And so what we've undertaken is a further extension of the basic teaching, and we call this the basic understanding, where we got more involved with the X, Y, and Z axis, getting to understand how we operate through the Krebs cycle, the DNA, and the codons of the DNA. And then we went into some more exciting fields, and we had to discuss the brain, the bones, memory, transmutation of the energies, and of course hormones. We discussed that last week. So the thing is that this is still part of basic understanding, and so to expand on this understanding, we really had to touch on these individual subjects so that we do have a context of reference. And in the process, what we've done is we've been breaking barriers. And so some of these barriers have been this maximum speed of light, the second law of thermodynamics, what are superconductors and superinsulators, the failings of neutron math and the failings of the vacuum theories. We have to have a proper definition of what science is and a definition of what spirituality is. And of course, we all grew up in the nuclear age. And so we've heard a lot about nuclear decay. But the most overriding theory that pretty much all scientists around the world are eager to learn is the grand unification theory. And we have finally achieved that. And as I say, this is just a basic understanding. So we're looking at just covering the ground there. And if I may just go back and just say, you know, when we started with the terminology, one of the first words we learned was about the PM-TICs. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Because you see, this is all based on only book number 1, which is the Universal Order of Creation of Matters. And in that universal order of creation of matters, the matters we created were matter, antimatter, and dark matter. And so these were new terms, and we had to understand the context of these new terms. And this is why the terminology was very important. So the basics was the magnetical gravitational relationship of energy and motion, which is natural plasma. And so we, as plasma scientists, discovered the nanostate, the GAN state, and we're trying to figure out what is the impact of this. And so we discovered orders of magnitude and how that relates to our life, and are we using orders of magnitude in our life? So when we buy a fast car, we like to go from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in the fastest amount of time, and that would be 2 orders of magnitude. But if we were to go 2 orders of magnitude higher than that, we would be going at 10,000 kilometers an hour. And I'd say that's pretty fast. So when we understand orders of magnitude, we have to understand the significance of it. You know, if we were only 1 order of magnitude taller, each and every one of us, most of us would be then around 20 meters tall. And I wonder what would happen to the basketball league. Anyway, we try to discuss basic science through surface to volume ratios, what we refer to as susceptibility, and how we go through the various geometries, the various dimensions. And we introduced one of the liberating aspects of it, which is the monatomic structure of the elements. And this gave us a dynamism. And we continue to talk about this dynamism and how we can go through the gradients of dynamism. And the gradients of dynamism give us different capabilities. So we discovered principal matter, amino acids, star formations, plasma states. And the thing about it, with the most particular with the amino acids, we discovered the positioning of the DNA and the RNA. And of course, with the plasma state, it involved rotation. But where we get into trouble is when we get into non-tangibility, which was the dynamic plasma state. And it's hard to understand this when, as an archaeologist, I like to look at artifacts. And these artifacts are basically residues, matter state residues. And we try and figure out how these residues came from. So as we've done this through history, we, discovered the Stone Age, the Iron Age, the Bronze Age, and various other ages, the computer age, and now we're in the plasma age. And the thing is, the artifacts don't show that. The artifacts are basically stating that our ancestors were actually not very intelligent or well educated. And yet to this day, what we built 12,000 years ago, which we call the pyramids. It's extremely difficult to duplicate with man-made means. So we are going through a review of the terminology because we've been dropping the ball in many areas. And as I said, context is very, very important. So we started with PM ticks. We're going to have to go back to PM ticks. As I said, these classes are not just for the new students, they're for the mature students as well. But as you said, Mark, it's very important for us to have new teachers because despite the fact that we have millions of knowledge seekers, there are billions who still don't know anything about this. And so all of us in attendance today are here, not only eager to learn, but eager to be in a position to be able to share this with our brothers and sisters around the planet. And they are our brothers and sisters. And this is something that we're having trouble still understanding, which is one of the reasons that we're in this planetary quarantine. So when we talk about PM ticks, we're talking about energy parceling systems. And in the pursuit of energy, we have to understand that there's a sequence. And I keep referring to the sequence because last week we talked about sequencing in a very specific way, and that had to do with hormones. And just to review that class, we found that the hormones themselves grow in sequence. And so this sequence becomes a pattern. And that's what science is. It's to identify these patterns, because it's through these patterns that we have a communication sequence. And if we don't have a communication sequence, then we find that we have a disruption. So the hormones are doing this very, very well because these hormones interact. And they especially interact, but not exclusively, with the adjacent hormone. Okay, so the most important thing with the adjacent hormone is that it's a representation of a line sequence. So what that means is the higher hormone activates the next hormone in line. Likewise, the lower hormone suppresses the previous hormone in line. So let's say if we remember the early trains, the steam locomotive. And so there you are shucking the wood into the furnace to generate the heat, to generate the steam that drives the train. And so as you are loading up the furnace and you keep loading and keep loading and keep loading, once it achieves a certain temperature, you stop loading. And so this is you communicating and connecting between the wood pile and the furnace. So you can clearly see when the flame is down that you need to activate the wood pile. And when you see the heat coming up to a certain level, then you stop feeding from the wood pile. So we are in that process a communicator. Very simple example, but this is how the hormones are interacting. So we have starters and stoppers. And this sequence is natural. That's the word, it's natural. But there is a sequence. And so we find that our understanding and our basic understanding, one of the subjects, the earlier subjects that we discussed was the formation of amino acids, which is the protein layer that is on the surface of our cups of life. Oh yeah. And so these become the precursors for the DNA, the fatty acids, the proteins, the cells, and more complex cells. And so we found that the growth of protein, which is our bodies, if you will, involves going from an unstable to a more stable complex. And the reason it's more stable is because it is more complex. So simultaneously, as we're progressing, we're also going from a simple to a complex. So the more complex, the more stable. And to be more stable, it has to be more complex. So this is where the sequence comes in. So for some reason, many of us are always out of sequence. What am I talking about? Well, as a bodybuilder, we're focused on protein. As a someone who is concerned about weight loss, we're concerned about fatty acids. Someone who is doing genetic modification is discussing DNA and RNA. And as we find that they are just part of the chain. So this study is actually kind of fruitless because what we really need to get into is the plasma science. And that's what we're discussing. So we see that the amino acids are the building blocks. And as such, there's a unique characteristic is that 3 amino acids are the foundation. And so, well, the foundation of what? And then we find that a 4th amino acid causes a folding over. So we understand that that is the building block of protein. So when we produce protein, we found that we had a byproduct that is water. So now we know the other elements that are produced in the cup. But getting back to this amino acid and it's folding over and producing protein, if it doesn't fold over, then that is a polymer. And that is a man-made product. And being a man-made product is in the matter state. We're talking about small lamb matter state. And we're not talking about small lamb matter state here. We're talking about capital M matter state, plasma science, and going through advanced science, which involves protein building. And so if we remember our classes on amino acid building, we found that the amino acids form a star formation. And that star formation ended up with a formation of oxygen, the blue one in the center, the nitrogen, the green one on the right, the carbon, the black one on the left, and the little one there is the hydrogen. And this created a star formation. And so this was the basis of protein building. And that's why, you know, when you start something, you like to start at the beginning. And so although the amino acid wasn't the beginning, the PM ticks were the beginning. And so we find that the vertical people really understand this because here is a daisy, and we find that it is manifested into physicality with the benefit of PM ticks. And it really likes the PM ticks that it gets from the sun during the daytime. And the interesting thing here is that we see a manifestation in physicality of not only one center core, which is the yellow component, which is actually, if you look closely, in the formation of hexagons. And then we see the petals, which is another physical manifestation. And this particular picture, you may recall from Thursday's teaching, but not in this direct fashion. What we want to say is that there is a physical manifestation based on something, on the plasmatic substructure, and you can see that there's a physical difference in the manifestation. And so the vertical people have got this well organized, because I have never seen a plant school for anybody else other than agricultural students. So the daisies aren't alone. Here is another plant that not only has a particular center core, but it has another ring around its center core and more petals. And not only one row of petals, but 2 rows of petals. So there's a similarity in the vertical structure. And of course, in the background, you see the grass and other foliage that is covering the earth. And so there is a whole lot of stuff going on. So basically, when we're looking at natural plasma, and that's what it is, we understand that we understand 3 basic dimensions. So the X, Y, and Z axis is how we refer to these 3 dimensions. transmission involving rotation, transition involving the poles, the north and south pole, but transmutation involves the field strength. And last week we found out that there's quite a difference in this transmutation, because there's one transmutation that involves the transformation into our soul of man, and there's another involves the transportation of the soul of our body. And so we find that these souls are the core, and they are positioning themselves. These core elements are the plasma, and the positioning is the interaction with other plasmas. And it is this interaction which creates a dynamism, which we call the dynamic plasma. And so whether it's a plasma, which is referencing energy in motion, and energy in motion has to have a charge. So, but it can stay within the plasma, or it can interact with other plasmas and become dynamic. But not only that, but it can go through various geometries. And so we see some of the dimensions that we go through these geometries. And through all these classes, we've identified soul dimensions and emotions. And we find that emotions are quite involved in our universal order of creation as a co-creation. And then we find that we have various ranges on Earth here, and that we can transcend these ranges. Okay, so let's just review something here, because this is the whole purpose of this class today, is to finish off this teaching. So we're going to bring everything back together again and understand that energy is always energy. It can never be taken away. It can be denied, or it can be added. So if it's added, it is being given. And so we find that energy is negative or positive, and what that means is that the negative is the giver and the positive is the taker. But we as humans can give and take from ourselves, which we cause a binding of energy. But if we share this energy with others, then the energy can become flowing. So it has to have both characteristics. And what exactly is this energy that is moving? Well, this energy is called PM ticks, which is the subject of today's class again. And so we say when two forces come together, if they have a common purpose, if they have a common energy field, then they create a little dance. And through this little dance, we begin the manifestation. The manifestation. Did we say it was plasmatic or physical? No, we did not. Well, we said it's a manifestation. And so as this manifestation is coming together, we see that in space, it is full of energy. Space is full of energy in motion. And we find that this energy is actually the currency of energy in a plasmatic field. So when we transact energies in a plasmatic field, energy is the currency. And so this energy is, shall we say, a plasma fuel, but it's kind of different fuel from what we're used to, because when these forces come together, more and more energy keeps coming. Okay, and so it's not just two, it's many. And the more that come and the more that are attracted to build up this field. So as this field is built up, to maintain this energy, there has to be a rotating field, because the energy is always in motion. It will not stop. So if you want to contain it, you got to kind of put it in a rotating field. And then you find that that energy, as it keeps coming in, well, it also has to be going out. But as you retain more, then it builds, and this introduces the Z-axis. And as this develops to a certain point, it becomes a plasma. And so we find that now we understand what ideas are all about. Ideas are plasma energies. And we know that they're real because we are always sharing ideas, and we share the ideas freely, and this is a normal thing to do. And so being a normal thing, it's a natural thing, and that's the whole point. So when we discussed our positioning, and the summary of our positioning involved two souls, soul of the man and the soul of the body. And we found that therefore we have two emotions, emotion of man and the emotion of physicality. And so, and as such, we found that our brain is physical, but it has different capabilities. And so that is part of the transmutation, which we call transformation. But now we have to transport ourselves somewhere, so we have a physical body as well. And so there's a relationship that we see with our physical structure, which is mimicked by the physical relationship of what we see as the sun and the earth. But clearly, the sun is a lot brighter than the earth, a lot brighter. Okay, so wherever we are, we're in the position of the context of these two fields, and that is our emotion of presence. So we are actually mimicking this. And so when we talked about the transformation of the energy in our brain, we find that we had two hemispheres. And these two hemispheres are cross-channeling. They are linked up. And we find that there is a substructure of a star formation that involves the pituitary and the pineal gland and the positioning of the soul and the corpus callosum, which surrounds the brain. And so we see that not only do we have a brain in our head, which is the home for the soul of man, but we have a heart in our body, which is the home for the soul of the body, and there's a relationship there. And likewise, both of those have an interaction with our presence. And when they have this interaction with our presence, it is the distance between the past and the future. And that is one dimension. There are other dimensions. All the dimensions work the same way. The plasma science has to do with magnetical fields, gravitational fields. The combination of these fields create a mag-grav condition. From this mag-grav condition, we can give and take. That's how we keep energy in motion. So the mag-grav condition retains the energy, but to retain this energy, we have to give and take, but not just from ourselves. We can give and take somewhere and from somewhere, and we haven't decided where that comes from. But what is this energy in motion in the giving and the taking? So we actually have to go back to the beginning, which is the PM ticks. The PM ticks are energy packs. They're called an energy parceling unit. And this is the fundamental energy. The viruses totally understand this, and they act normally. And if we understand that this is a normal reaction, then we would understand viruses much better. But as scientists, we're having problems understanding when we look at the core component, say an electron, we see that its construction is matter, antimatter, and dark matter, but being an electron, it's magnetical. And then we see that the neutron, whose substructure is matter, dark matter, and antimatter, but being of a different nature, is gravitational. And for many of us, we just cannot see the difference. And this is the problem. This is one of the barriers. So we really have to overcome this barrier to understand that the electron is magnetical and the neutron is gravitational. And what is that criteria? So when we look at the mag-grav condition, we have to see that there's a sequence. So we say it's either attraction, repulsion, or it's repulsion, attraction. So if we have excess energy coming in, then that excess energy has to go out. That makes it magnetical. And if we have excess energy going out, then we have to compensate by having energy coming in. That makes it gravitational. So this balance between attraction and repulsion is, we always call it a mag-grav condition. So that mag-grav condition has to be there. It is from the mag-grav condition that it becomes magnetical. So the magnetical is the residue of the mag-grav condition, or the gravitational aspect is the residue of the mag-grav condition. And whether it's magnetical or gravitational is the difference between a neutron and a proton, and the difference between your point of view. And your point of view matters. So when we came here and we wanted to find out about the cups of life, they are not the cups of pandemic, they're the cups of life. And the reason for that is because this is now telling us how the universe is created. So we see that the energy is abundant in the universe, and the universe exists from this energy. So this energy has a charge. That charge is in motion, and the energy is always in motion. But when you look at the cover of book number 1, that is in singularity. You only have one plasma field. When we look at the picture on the right, we see that we have 2 plasma fields, and there's an interaction between the 2, which we call the infinity loop. So these pictures that you're looking at are not visible to the naked eye. And so this is where another problem comes in, is the manifestation of reality. So we said when 2 fields come together, they form another. This formation of any field is what we call a manifestation. And it's this continuous plasma feeding via the PM ticks, which leads to this manifestation. But this manifestation may be non-tangible or tangible, non-visible or visible, plasmatic or physical. And therefore it could be a dark matter or a light matter, because light carries mass. And there is a plasmatic reality and therefore a physical reality. But there's no rule that says that a plasmatic reality will manifest into a physical reality. Whatever the manifestation is, that is a form artifact. So we find that the emotions of presence, non-visible, non-tangible, is a form artifact of energy in motion, right? And so we see that everything involves a relationship. So the singularity is what we call the holy cow. The duality is what we call the holy moly. But we all know what the Holy Trinity is, but there's a 4th dimension, and that's the holy mackerel. And the problem with this is that when we open the bag and the cat jumps out, it's hard to get the cat and put it back in the bag. But, you know, when we open a can of sardines, it's really hard to close that lid again. And this is a problem with matter state. It has limitations, and the energy is always in motion. So you open the lid, the physical structure and the initial intention of the physical structure is gone. And this is one of the dimension changes that we have in matter state. We have dimension changes all over the place. And that's why we have to understand what the context is. Once we have a context, then we can have a field reference. So the whole purpose is that we have to have a relationship established. So we had a sequence of energy states, starting with matter state, which is the lowest energy state because it's physical. And we graduated through the various energy states to come to the soul states, which involve the plasma and the dynamic plasma states. The rising and lowering of our ability to go through these various states is what we call the transition. But as we convert from the physical to the emotional, which is our main mode of transportation on this planet, that is the transmission of energy that we have grown accustomed to. But we find that we always think of the earth as our gravitational home. But the truth is our body is our gravitational home. And to maintain the structure, we have to have a substructure. And what's in that substructure is our soul. So our soul is gravitational and our body is magnetical. And this is a good thing because we are able to go along the earth, right? So what we're saying is that we, and this is our understanding of the transcendence of energy states, our point of view is from a gravitational point of view, okay? Not from the Earth's point of view. When we look at what we're doing on the Earth, we are transferring energy through what we call heat and electricity. We have gone through the nuclear age, so that's another form of transfer through the nuclear physics. And then we now have introduced via nano and GaN state a transfer energy using plasma physics. And now we understand that there's a substructure, a non-visible, non-tangible substructure of matter, dark matter, and antimatter, which are also at different energy states. And they allow us to transcend into the plasma state and the dynamic plasma state. So we have a transfer state now between the physical and the non-physical. And that is one of the range transcendence achievements that we have to overcome, because our position on this planet is very much exclusively in the domain of transition ranges and transmission ranges. And that range is within what the range of the planet. So the planet's range is between the ground and the sky. So the ground is the gravitational and the sky is the magnetical. And so we are playing within these ranges. And so we see that we have been able to design the stacker units accordingly. What it means is that when we looked at the original science, when we looked at the original star formations, we actually had rotating balls, which are physical, filled with GaNs, which was physical, driven by electric motors, which are physical. But when we put them in a star formation, we found that we created a plasma state, which was not physical. And when the star formation was created, we created a dynamic plasma state, which was non-physical. So we know that the higher state is gravitational, the lower state is magnetical. So we find that within these star formations, a phenomenon occurred where we had two physical matter state and GaN state and two non-physical plasma state and dynamic state in the same range on this planet. We didn't even have to go anywhere. We were doing this in our labs, and many of us have been doing this in our homes. And so the point is that these PM ticks are coming from everywhere. They come from all different locations. This is what's happening constantly. So it doesn't just happen in the magravs, and it doesn't just happen with us. This happens within many, many spheres in the universe. And one of our favorite spheres, of course, is our planet. So we find that the energy is coming in through paths where we absorb energy and we emit energy. And the rules of emission and absorption are the rules of magnetical gravitational relationships, which involve repulsion and attraction. And so the Earth has its rotating field around the equator, and then it has a rotating field around called the magnetosphere. And whether or not this energy is following a path or not following a path is called susceptibility. But the energy has a choice to follow that path based on its susceptibility, and then it has to go out first before it comes in, and to be retained, it has to go around. And if the susceptibility is not there, it will just go right on through. What is this energy? Well, and how is this energy created? So we find that the decay of the neutron into the basis of an electron and a proton, which are the fundamental structures of an atom, involves the release of PM ticks. This is part of the decay process. And this is one of the problems with the nuclear science, is that the nuclear decay may take 20 to 50,000 years. And we now know we've been able to reduce that. So down to days, actually. So the release of PM ticks is a natural byproduct. And so to release PM ticks, we have to be able to get PM ticks. And so one of the ways that we create an attraction for these PM ticks is to create a mag-grav condition, kind of like the Earth. And we are using nanostate and GAN state. And of course, we're also using plasma state to bring these PM ticks in. But the thing about these PM ticks, they are all in different field strengths. They are all in different flavors. And they come in different directions. In fact, they come from all sorts of directions. And when we look at our little tiny perfect world here, we have to review how our gravity works here. Gravity follows the flux lines which follow the surface of the Earth, you see. And if we draw, and we know what a tangent is, which is a flat line that hits a point on the Earth, and from there we can draw a perpendicular line. And we know a perpendicular line is a right angle at 90 degrees to the tangent. And so we find that the perpendicular line cuts across these flux lines. And why is this important? And that is because these flux lines are actually going through objects. So it goes through us, it goes through our GANs, it goes through the rock in this picture. And here's a rock on the ground. But, you know, if you're strong enough, you can lift this rock. But what happens is these flux lines do not leave the rock. They stretch with the lifting of the rock. So why is that? And that is because flux lines seek density. So the area under the rock, which is air, is clearly less dense than the rock. So therefore the flux lines below the rock are attracted into the rock. And so there are less flux lines under the rock. And so this is why when you drop the rock, you better move your feet fast, because these flux lines will come back. And so these flux lines stretch just like an elastic rubber band. And that's what you're looking at. You're looking at a rubber band. But a rubber band is a rubber band is a rubber band. So this particular rubber band is round. But, you know, it can be oval shaped or it can be elliptical. And we can have a narrow band on the bottom, or we can have a thick band that's on the top. And as you can see, this is a band that stretches out. And as we know with the rubber bands, they stretch. Well, this is what happens to the flux lines. So when we look at these flux lines, you understand that they can stretch. And what we're going to do, we know that we have this tangent, and we know that we can take a perpendicular line from that tangent. We're now going to introduce the second tangent. Okay, so we have two tangents. Why not? Now we have a relationship between two tangents. And what does that mean? Well, it's a range. And as PM ticks are flying all the way through these flux lines, we find that we are part of these flux lines on Earth. But because we have our own spaceship, which we call our body, we can walk on this Earth. And through our ingenuity, we have created planes and rockets. And so we can fly. But now you know why you have to fly in the sky and not on Earth. We drive on Earth, or we ride a bicycle on Earth. but we fly a plane in the sky, because as these tangent lines move, you find that the field gets larger the more magnetical it is. So in other words, the shape between the two tangents is conical. In other words, narrower at the bottom, wider at the top. From our point of view, the sky is gravitational, the ground is magnetic. That's our point of view. And how we operate, whether we walk on this planet or we fly in the sky, we can transition these various ranges. And so what we have to understand is that these PM ticks are coming in, out, around, or just passing through us. Energy is always in motion. So as we transition through these ranges, we are going through different strengths. And as this is a basic understanding, it is very hard to go from here. However, the vertical people really understand this. Again, they're not going to school. So this is the side view of the daisy. Underneath the manifestation of the flower is the stem, and the stem goes into the ground, and in the ground there's a root. So from the Earth's point of view, the ground is gravitational, the sky is magnetical. And this daisy has got it right. The roots are grounded in the ground, and the flower is pointing towards the sky. And so we see that these daisies are growing. And you can see that even though the roots are closer together at the earth level, the flowers are moving apart the higher they go. And this would be perfectly normal because, let's face it, the earth has a curvature. So it is physically impossible for two daisies, if they were to grow in a straight line, for them to converge at the top. They would have to diverge at the top. The only way they could converge at the top is if the stem would be bent. So if the one on the right would bend to the left and the one on the left would bend to the right, then you would see the flowers coming together. But because these flowers want to grow, they have oriented themselves very nicely. So although the roots are closer together, the flowers move apart. And so all of them are growing. All of them are sharing the experience of the sunlight, of which is delivering PM ticks. Getting back to the elastic, the rubber band. We can twist the rubber band. And we have other different types of twisting. So here are two examples. One of the things we've talked about is the chains of man. And here is a chain, and here is a man. And the thing about this, it forms a field. But now we know that there are two fields. So we have a containment of the soul of man and a containment of the soul of body. And we have a brain and we have a body. And we have a connection. But we are considered horizontal people. We walk vertically, but at night we sleep, and we sleep horizontally. And the thing about it is that our physical body would sleep in a bed, but the soul body, the soul of man, dreams. and the energy comes into the body to maintain the body. The energy comes in to maintain the soul of man. And so because the body is our body, that's magnetical, and our soul, because it's of a higher energy state, is gravitational. But at night, our soul of man can leave the body. And we've often referred to the link between the soul of man and the soul of the body as a silver cord. And where this comes from, if you know someone who is clairvoyant, at night when they look out over the city, not only can they see the souls dreaming, but they can see the silver cord attaching them. I said clairvoyant. Okay, so they can see the higher energy, things that are generally speaking for most of us not visible. So the visible, the non-visible becomes visible, and they can see this. But we are attached to a silver cord, and that's a good thing, because when our dream is over, we wake up. And so we come back into our body, right? And it's a natural flow. So this is a pretty good thing. But what we've been talking about is releasing of the soul of man. And so as this is the concluding class of the basic series, this is where the new teaching is going. By unlinking the chain and allowing the soul to be free is where the new science is taking us, you see. So are we able to release this chain and still keep our body, or do we have to do it the old-fashioned way, totally leave our body behind? Well, we have some choices. And so we've been talking about the transcendence of the soul. And the transcendence of the soul actually involves an elevation. We talk about an elevation. And so we see that the energies are still coming. Some are visible, some are non-visible. And the visible is based on the form artifact, isn't it? So if the form artifact is physical, then we can see the manifestation of the energy and motion in the physical beings. But if the reality is plasmatic, then there has to be a manifestation in some other way that we can see this. And we know this because we have emotion, we have a mental state, we have a spiritual state, and we have a soul state. And so now we understand the relationship of these various energy levels. And we're still on Earth, and we're still in the range on Earth between the ground and the sky. Sometimes our souls don't snap back. And the elastic that is kind of holding our soul to this earth gets broken. And that is one way that the spirit gets broken and the soul escapes. I've tried to draw comparisons between the energy and motion through a nerve. So there's a relationship with the head and the tail, and an energy transport in between. I try to draw a relationship with an essential fatty acid. Connection is through the carbon, and energy flows from one end to the other end. And I try to draw a relationship between the physical atomic structure as we understand it through the periodic table of elements, through the monatomic structure that we have discovered through the nanostate. And so what we're doing is we're going through the chains of man and unchaining. And so our knowledge has to do with freedom and the freedom and emancipation of man on this planet. And it all boils down to energy in motion. And so we find that our physical bodies are basically made up of gas. And so we have been able to really see that these chains that we've been talking about are actually our liberating ticket. So it's the GANs of man. And as we've been trying to go through this basic series and sort out all these things and sort them in sequence so that we can communicate, we come to the point in our favorite game of tic-tac-toe, and we say, well, do we transition energy or do we transmit energy, and whose turn is it anyway? And it's a fun game, but this is a two-dimensional game. And it comes from, yeah, we can have singularity in a maggrav state, but we can take this maggrav and turn it into another form by introducing a polarity. And we bring in another maggrav state and connect it. And we can do this another and bring in the Trinity and connect them. And so we have a basic maggrav, which we talked about way back in 2015, 2016, and it was the major dialogue. And then we find that, wow, we can do more. We can grow in other directions. And in order to maintain these magravs, we understand that energy is going around through each and every one of these magravs. And then in order for the energy to go around, we know that the energy has to come in. And likewise, the energy has to go out. And where does this energy come from? So now we understand that the energy in motion is not just in space, but it's on this planet as well. And so these PM ticks are not a space product, they are a universal product. They're universally available to all of us all the time. And so when we look at how the spaceships are looking, we understand the difference between a physical spaceship like the saucer, which is basically half a maggrav, or we're looking at a sphere, which is a replication of the same field energy that we see from the sun or the earth, or we stretch it out into a cylindrical form. We understand that whether it's a spaceship off Earth or on Earth or in our body, PM ticks are always in motion, and PM ticks are coming in different flavors. So, what flavor do you want? Well, this is how plasma energy works. It works through attraction or repulsion. So the flavors you like are what you attract, and the flavors you don't need are what you repel. And so we find that these energies that we emit are part of what we call rays. Rays are PM ticks. So we actually participate in this whole process. We are giving off PM ticks all the time, and this is part of creation. And it doesn't just come into play with the left side and the right side of our hemispheric brains, but it also comes from the interaction between the soul of the body and the soul of the man, which comes out through the y-axis. And all of this is done at light speed. And I didn't say what speed that is. And whether it goes out, then you can absorb it. And that's the same way. And that's how we maintain our structure, be it a substructure, which is a plasmatic reality, or a physical structure, which is our physical reality. So, and this is also done at light speed. And again, I didn't say what speed that was, but so we understand that when we talk about magnetical, we are talking about the maggrav condition plus the residue. So it's either magnetical or gravitational, and that indicates the direction of flow. So when we talk about the direction of flow, when we are looking at the disruption of communication in a matter state basis, which we discussed last week, we find that PM ticks are flowing in the plasma reality and in the physical reality. And so when you have a disruption in the physical reality, which is a manifestation of the plasmatic reality in its initial stage, you are disrupting that after the fact. So if we are doing DNA modification or RNA modification, it's after the fact of the production of the amino acid, which is after the fact of creating the plasmatic fields. That's why it's the cups of life and not the cup of the pandemic, because there's a lot more that's going on. These two cups represent the basis of our physical and emotional well-being. So when we look at it and we understand how important it is now, if it was important 18 months ago, it is more important today because things are changing. So we look into one cup, we take a zinc plate and a copper coil and a nano-coated copper coil. And each and every one of us should have this in our home, okay? Because there's a whole lot going on. We're creating a magnetical field and we're creating a gravitational field. And once these fields become plasmatic, although they are being generated inside, they are not contained by the glass of the cup, because these fields are, first of all, interacting between the matter state components. Then they create a GANS, which is coming from the PM ticks in the universe. So the manifestation of the GANS, which is in this case zinc GANS and copper GANS, is a manifestation of the PM ticks, which are rays in motion. And now these two GANSs create PM ticks and create a field which draws in the CO2 GANS. Now you have the basis of your star formation where you draw in the amino acid, which is the oily layer on the surface of the water in the cup of life. And when you have oil or protein, then the complementary creation is water, the universal solvent on this planet, okay? And one of the abilities for us to actually move on this planet is with the calcium. And so we understand now that we have another GANS in our cups of life, a whole lot going on inside these cups. And the second cup is the same way. We've just changed the zinc plate for a copper plate. And we still have the magnetical field. We still have the gravitational field. And because the pandemic is still around, when we look at the two cups, we have an emotional and a physical cup, and they have an interaction of fields identical to each other. But if we want to deal with the pandemic, let's keep these guys apart at least 1 meter, because these fields that are being generated within the cups are plasmatic. They do not recognize the weak energy of the physical reality. So as this energy builds, we now have a gravitational field in each one, and they have a purpose. And that purpose is to eradicate the virus. And the one way that we can do this is by depleting the energy, because the virus is an energy pack. And not only can we deplete it, but we can convert it. And when we convert it to what? To energy. And that energy is food. And so we understand that we have relationships. Magnetical gravitational relationships, always seeking a balance. And when we achieve that balance, that is called a maggraph. We are looking for the same balance between the scientific and the spiritual community. And when we can bring those two together, that becomes additive. In other words, we are adding the beauties of the two sciences together. And so this is the same way that we are extending that to the understanding of the manifestation of the cells. The manifestations of the cells in our body are a representation of the manifestation of matter. Manifestation of matter, capital M, plasmatic reality, lowercase m, physical reality manifestation. It all has to do with the conversion of light, light in motion, light that carries mass. And that mass is involving our soul, which is also converting between the soul of man and the soul of the body. and the soul of the earth and the soul of the sun. So now we understand that we as humans, we see the representation in our cups of man. When we put the two cups together, they form a maggraph in combination where one is the giver and one is the taker. But we have a field that is creating a plasma field, and that starts to grow as an entity because it not only has a magnetical field and a gravitational field, but it also manifests with a soul. And this, we introduce the cups of soul because each cup, physical cup one, physical cup two, emotional cup one, and the cup of soul, cup three, these all have magnetical gravitational field and a soul field, and collectively the three have a soul. And so as the new knowledge seekers come and they want to know, well, what is plasma? Tell them it's a kind of energy state, and there are different kinds of energy states, and it's very important to our lives. You have to figure out what is your point of view. And so when we look at the plasma science, and our point of view restricted to a little tiny red dot in the bottom right hand corner, which is our tiny perfect world within our tiny perfect universe? Or are we looking at an earthbound, breaking the earthbound barriers and going into the spacebound reality? It doesn't really matter, because our soul is linked to a source, and that source is linked to our soul. And so it goes both ways. It doesn't really matter. What does matter is that the plasma science is bound to the ethics, the ethos of the universe, and the ethos of the universe involves ethics. So the new E equals MC squared is actually the morality times the compassion times the courage. And these are the fundamental substructures of creation. Life wants to live. So that is the rule and the law of creation. We have to understand that we have a plasma satisfaction that is the basis of the plasma bound science. Through the universal body enhancement units, we are going to offer an opportunity to restore our emotional and physical vitality, which are only part of the whole process, aren't they? Because energy is always in motion. And so there is also a plasma interaction that involves a magnetical gravitational pulling and pushing, which is what we call a maggrav condition. And what we're seeing is a residue, and that is the maggrav condition plus the residue. So not to say good or bad, it's just to give you something to think about, because we're going into a new type of teaching. We're going to be talking more about the soul. Like Marie has been teaching fantastic classes talking about the soul, and Jalal has been doing that as well. We need more teachers to open up to the energies of the universe. We have our star formation. Yield to these energies that are coming in via the PM ticks and allow them to manifest in your reality. Receive that energy, and how you receive that energy is you provide the pattern, and then you get the energy. It's that simple. And so we talked about dependency, and we can not be independent. We like to be independent but we are independent as the last man standing. And what we are independent of is the stoppers, the disruptors. And we don't want to be dependent on them. That's why you cannot play poker in space, because the universal community understands that. You cannot depend on someone who's undependable. So there's always an interdependence, and there's always a codependency. And I hope last week's IQ test that most of you passed. Which one doesn't fit when you're looking at dependence? We are just the messengers. We are part of this process. And what we are carrying is the message of peace and friendship. And we do this through the deliverance of PM ticks, the interaction with PM ticks. We are dependent on this. So that therefore it becomes quite important as to decide what kind of creation are we creating, understanding that destruction is also a form of creation. So this is bringing us to the conclusion of the basic teachings of the plasma science with the Keshe Foundation Spaceship Institute as we're trying to put in this information in public domain. And the main thing that we have to understand is that the peace is a key component of the plasma science. It won't work without peace. So the World Peace Treaty not only needs to be signed with a pen, it has to be signed with a heart, because that is the only way that we can achieve physical and emotional harmony and vitality on this planet. And as knowledge seekers, we discover the truth. But can we make a difference? And that becomes your challenge. You see, because the dynamic plasma state is within us. And this is a universal language throughout the universe. The plasma science needs to be delivered in exchange for peace on Earth. And that is not only the end of this lesson, this is the end of the basic understanding classes. Thank you all so much for participating in this exercise. I hope you've enjoyed the trip, and I hope that you can help others the way we've all been helping each other through these classes. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Alex. Wondering if we could take apart this PM ticks for a minute. Now, I went back to the book and I looked a little bit in it. And this is an acronym of sorts, like SCUBA. The P, I think, would be plasmatic.
Correct.
And then the rest of it, other than the S, what is the S? Is that the fields? Because the second part is magnetic, and that would include gravitational and magnetic.
Well, it's plural. It's not, you can't just grab one. And you can't stop more from happening. What we're talking about is copious abundance. Totally opposite from what our problem is on this planet. We perceive our survival on this planet through a lack of food, a lack of money, a lack of nookie, all these lacks. The universe is overabundant, and it'll give you what you need as much as you need when you need it in a timely fashion. This is how we have to understand to play with the universe and not, just play in this sandbox on this planet.
So it would be plasmatic magnetic fields is simply abbreviated PM ticks.
Yeah, but they're not in the maggrav. They are their own maggrav. They are their own containment, but they are energy in motion, and it's looking for a home.
It says that the plasmatic magnetic fields are detached from their source of creation.
That's correct.
Okay, sẽ là
Just a moment.
là
Good. I know Solomia was talking about water. We need some water in Southern California and all of California. Apparently, the power plants have, if the reservoirs in the water systems become any lower, they're going to have to shut down their hydroelectrical source. So we need to send some fields of water over there, although the weather forecast is due for some rain. But as we know, not only does water create power in our matter state, so to speak, but it also provides a lot of agricultural land that many of the farmers, and I know we're working with farmers and trying to give them more sustainability, but there is quite a crisis brewing, whether it totally manifest, but it has manifested itself past the point of where it normally would.
So Mark, we conventionally water our plants and the plants grow. And in order to grow, they have to manufacture protein. Agreed?
Okay, they
So,
create a field around them,
yeah, but they create protein. The plant grows.
the amino acids.
Yeah, but the plant itself is a protein. What I'm saying is a small plant, the difference between a small plant and a large plant is how much protein is in the plant.
Okay, by volume, not by concentration.
Right. So we're taking the water and converting it to protein. Now we have a depletion of water. So we know that when we create protein, we also create water. Okay, this is the essence of the plasma science. It's a two-way street. And in the old understanding, it's only a one-way street. Apply the water, get the plant. Now we need to go in the opposite direction. And how many classes has Mr. Kesh put forward?
You're talking the knowledge seekers workshops?
Yeah, just that.
Oh, 385 completed.
Okay. This information is in public domain. So whose responsibility is the problem in California?
Right, we had made proposals years ago in the Matter State where you could catch a lot of this runoff from Alaska and so on and channel it down through the mountains or the valleys of the mountains, building some dams and things, creating some electricity. But as that rain was picked up on the West Coast, it then would give more hydration to the middle of the country and as well as the other East Coast of the country. I think we called it some sort of oasis project. We have names for oasis too, but we're working with the plasma. But that was a project that would have created a lot of jobs and would have probably helped to refill the aquifers, because every day billions and billions of gallons just run off these glaciers and right into the ocean. And maybe we don't want to disturb that process. But there are quite a severe drought. And of course, this will lead to the fires and so on and so forth. So we were trying to avert that, but using Matter State policies and proposals that we could actually do something with a physical type of economy. But now we're working with a more plasmatic economy, as we say, where we don't need to do so many of those Matter State jobs.
In many ways, you know, this is not so much a commentary show in that regard. We are Kesh Foundation is a science-based spaceship-bound institute, and so what we're looking at is to understand the creation of matter, as outlined in book number 1, and the structure of light is book number 2, and the creation of the universe in book number 3. And so this knowledge has been put in the public domain, and based on the description of the problem there that you just outlined in California, that is only one problem, but it would involve, the solution of that problem would involve a lot of employment opportunities. And this is the other message that we'd like to get across. This plasma science is going to offer an unbelievable number of opportunities for many, many
In
knowledge
all
seekers.
directions, no
In
question.
all directions, yes. And not only is it going to bring peace on Earth, which in some cases, the war has been the, shall we say, the mother of invention with respect to generating capital. We are now going to be able to generate prosperity through the plasma science, and based on the principles of orders of magnitude, it would not be a stretch to say that our benefits are going to be orders of magnitude more profitable.
And I know MOSFEC and Jalal have reported growth in the water in their containers, or at least levels that don't seem to evaporate for some reason. I've never created any water per se and gone in that direction, but this technology can obviously create water. I know
Well,
that one of the
conventionally-
byproducts, maybe we should take some of that plastic and break it down and help to refill. That's one of the things that we, all the plastic in the oceans, if you break the carbon hydrogen bond, is it, that you would release massive amounts of water. But that could cause some flooding, but we could also use it to refill aquifers, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. You're on the right track.
I'm not sure how to do that, but it's probably much easier than we think it is. And isn't that where all the water on this planet came from? It created it itself. It doesn't really come from space, even though comets seem to carry a lot of moisture in them. Jackie?
If you answer the question, which this week I was asking all over the place.
The shielding.
Exactly. When you shield it from the environment, so there is no loss in the energy to the environment.
But we have to use some on our irrigation. Even in Iran, Mr. Kesh showed us that the fields were saturated with water and GANs. So we can't shield it, maybe shield it from evaporation, but we still need to use it and replenish it, no?
Mark, the energy transfer in evaporation is a matter of state energy transfer, and it's a lower energy state transfer. The higher energy transfer state is through a plasmatic energy, and that's what Jalal was talking about.
Right, but we're just talking the shielding of it there. You still need to drink it and use it. If you take out, if you have a 5-gallon container and it's shielded, but now you're thirsty and you'd want some water, you would drink some of it, and therefore we need to replace it, I would think.
Mark, your lungs are doing this all the time. You breathe in the air.
Oh, no question. Yeah.
Okay, so our body has got it. Plants have got it. I mean, there are plants that grow in the desert, right? So, and there are plants that grow in the snow. One of the phenomena here in Canada is that it at 4 degrees Celsius is when the water starts to melt. So what happens is that in the snow, you will actually see a hole in the snow going right down to the ground level. And guess what grows? An iris grows. Why? Because that iris is generating the heat to melt the snow, which melts the snow into water, which nourishes the plant. But where did it get this heat from when it is covered up by snow? So, we're back to the PMTICs, energy in motion. The plants have got their act together. We're the ones who are having the problem.
And I know Mr. Kesh showed us this cup where you really don't have to water your plants, if I understand it correctly. Well, he did show us earlier, you have a dish inside of a dish. Maybe it goes up halfway around the inner dish. And therefore, if you put the GANs and other materials in there, the plant survives without watering. He said you can go on vacation for months. And we also know this, which I was quite surprised to see, when the lungs, if someone has pneumonia and they drain their lungs and they come back an hour later, the lungs are full of water again. How did the body do that? So no question, between the fields in the lungs and what's going on in there, it can create gallons of water, which in that case is sort of detrimental to the physicality. You can't breathe. You would get drowned in your own water, I would say. But yes, the phenomena is there, and it's not really a phenomena, it's science. We just need to understand more. Has anyone created water other than Mr. Kesh, let's say, and knew what they were doing in that creation of water? And we did have a couple questions in the chat, unless someone has something else they'd like to bring up. A question from Misty: how far away from metals and electronics or electricity outlets should the GANs be produced? Well, there's many fields in the universe, we know. There's many viruses, which are energy packages, and GANs is produced in the universe, I believe, in the outer layers, and we're full of GANs.
So if I can give a comment on that, I have had cups of life on a wooden shelf and cups of life on a metal shelf. And there's definitely a difference. So I would prefer to use the wooden shelf because the wooden shelf is organic.
And also you can make shielding, as Jalal just said. Herbert told us we can use zinc plates or nano-coated plates to separate the GANs, and therefore you do create a shielding, so to speak, between your containers, because they always want to interact where the stronger would feed the weaker. So by shielding it, you don't get so much of an interaction, I would say, or no interaction at all. And maybe that's part of your creation. You'd want to include some shielding, depending on where you're making it, as Alex said.
If I can just add also that once the GANs is produced, then the GANs itself, being of a higher energy state, doesn't see the physical metal state. So the plasma field actually does extend beyond the bricks and mortar and the steel. But it's to create this energy. Just like gravity seeks density, so the energy is also attracted in the same way. So it does affect the flow. Everything is working in combination. So if you can make a more ideal situation, then you will have better results. And this is part of the skills that we need.
Leanna says, in the earlier teachings, I thought it was shown how to make water, not sure which one. Maybe using salt GANs as a magnet for water. Never tried this, just an idea.
Why you think about the metal state, you do not think about the energy state. Do actually you take water inside your body or the energy? Even the plants do not take the water inside.
Right, the lungs are not
nothing can
taking,
penetrate.
yeah, the lungs are not taking in any water, but yet they fill up with water through the interaction of the fields, I would think.
But this is outside the body actually, like your skin. The water is outside your body, the interaction of the fields.
Yeah,
So always think about blood plasma.
Yeah, how do we produce sweat?
Exactly.
How do we produce dewdrop water? Where does the dew residue come from in the morning on the plant leaves?
I think that's from condensation. from the lowering of the temperature, which causes the humidity, just the way outside of an ice-filled glass, you'll get moisture forming. But that's just,
You call it in scientific as this, but it's actually interaction of fields.
but they produce a matter state called water or condensation.
Condensation, like Jalal says, is a matter state reaction. This is what this is why it's so important to have an understanding of energy sequencing.
But one thing here, all the people think of creation a matter. Is it really important creating a matter or creating an energy for this matter? So I
Yeah.
think this is your new teaching, the next teaching, Alex.
Dan is saying CO2/CH3 field.
Okay, good student.
And water is also GANs, Dan says, energy transfer. How did the oceans get filled? Isn't it just a big cup interacting from shoreline to shoreline or bay to bay? Isn't that how the planet filled with water? Didn't come from space, I don't think. Maybe some of the fields did, but not the actual matter state.
Wait. No, Mark. It did come from outer space.
Okay,
The sun and the earth came from outer space. The earth is traveling through outer space.
What you create with the interaction of the four field forces? It is field forces which is interact.
Right.
So you have all the time you have creation.
So it's the interaction of these field forces, which is the manifestation of reality. But that reality could be physical or plasmatic.
Alex, hi, it's Dean here. Can I say a few words that I think someone's put in chat that it's emotion, and I think it has a lot. I'm talking now about the conditions in the lungs and beyond that. So when I was a child, I had something called pneumonia, and from the teachings of Mr. Kess, I'm fairly sure that that's an emotional state where the emotion, the fields create the water in the matter state within the body. And also recently, I had, when I first interacted with plasma many years ago in the UK, I had a condition where I started to experiment, to do lots of different things like what a knowledge seeker does. And I had this very big flooding in the house where I was present, where I was living. And it flooded the bottom of the living room. And it was from a condition, I'm sure that was an emotional condition and a response to the same thing as when I was a child. And funny enough, I had this a couple of times. And then today, of all days, I had a very strange interaction. I've been putting Z&O and things in the garden, and cups of life and various other objects around the garden. And today there was I was sending a message, and I was speaking about the conditions of the matter state and what was going on presently with everything that is going on within the world. And then as I literally wrote the word matter, the doorbell rang, and I went, oh, okay, I went downstairs and I answered the door, and there was this gentleman from next door that speaking Austrian, and he took me to one side. He said, can you come and see this? And so in the back garden there was a hose pipe that had been connected for it has a very, very powerful motor, a sump pump that is much too powerful for the water well, and it actually projects the water so incredibly powerfully. I've never known anything like it. Anyway, when I went outside, there was like a 30-foot waterfall into the air, probably more, going up into the air. And somehow this water pump, how I do not know, had managed to turn itself on and project this water upwards. And there was no, it was one of those situations that the moment I wrote matter and the emotion and whatever was going through, that this big burst of not only plasmatic, but matter state condition of the water, the emotion of it manifesting once more. So I think there's more to this than meets the plasmatic eye. It's a wonderful condition, and I think it has a lot to do with emotion. Anyway, that's my my thoughts and intentions on that. Thank you, Ali.
Hello, Mr. Alex. I'd like to clarify something. Our lesson was about pemetics. I read the book and I found two more terminology related to pemetics, like MAFs and PMF. And I'd like to see what is the difference between these three terms, three concepts, MAFs and PMF, if you remember and if you can clarify. Thank you.
Yeah, so the PMFs are the central point of the magnetic fields of the universe. The MUFs are the magnetical fields, and the PM ticks are the rays, the energy transition looking for a field. So you have fields in general, you have the principal magnetic field and of the universe, and then you have the rays in motion. So you have all three conditions, the two most extreme and the central position. So energy is constantly flowing between all three, kind of like in our solar system, the sun is at the center, so that would be the principal matter, and the outer boundary of our solar system. So that would be where the rays are interacting, and they're not only interacting with our field here, which is the binding energy, but they're interacting with other solar systems, which is the flowing energy. And then we have the Magra field, which in our case here is our Earth. So these are all kind of the three different components. And we are the soul travelers between all of these fields. And that's what we are here to learn. Thank you for your question.
And it does say there are matter mass, antimatter mass, and dark matter mass.
Yeah, exactly. Because the rays come in different flavors, and so do the fields. The fields are a byproduct of the PM ticks, right? So the PM ticks look for a field, so when they create that field, and that field is representative of the energy that is in that PM tick. So each PM tick is different. That's why we have 7 billion souls on this planet, and we're all different. But each of us has over 70 trillion cells in our body, and they're all different. So, you know, just do the math, 7 billion times 70 trillion, and you've begun to understand how much variety there is in our little tiny perfect world, and then extrapolate to the rest of the universe, and then you better sit down because that number will be mind-boggling.
And maybe we can demonstrate if we're demonstrating the pulling of the CO2 out of the atmosphere, maybe we can make cups and show everyone how to make a cup of water for themselves. That would, especially in a drought condition or even in a survival situation. I mean, just on a small scale, of course, it could be scaled up. But I think that would be a beautiful demonstration, especially when everyone out in the West, Midwest, Northwest has water on their mind. And I know it's being done in Saudi Arabia and other places where you use a gas-fired turbine to desalinate. I mean, in the interim, that was our proposal, was to take a nuclear power plant and desalinate, a few trillion gallons out of the ocean and easily refill the aquifers. But again, we're using matter state sort of just to convert it from salty water to sweet water. But if you don't have any water, that is maybe acceptable.
If you review the kids workshop,
Mhm.
I think you will find the answer there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, Mark.
Yes, Jefferson. Hello.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Jefferson Rodriguez. Hello, Alex. Would you like to bring a point about from today to tomorrow? We are in a equinoctial position, and this we are exactly in the same strength fields from coming from the sun in the north hemisphere, in the south hemisphere as well. So is it very important a date in the matter of our planet, this equilibrium between we can send energy throughout this position or receive, I think, not only PM6, but the sun energy. So we can interact and help, I think, our planet, because Earth, I don't know, the society is so tied with the gravitational field of Earth. And in my view, my humble view, Earth, our planet is sick because we don't interact with it. We don't protect. I'm not talking about vertical or horizontal. People are just bringing about our planet, minerals, and the interaction with the core of our planet. And I'd like your opinion or your view, your teaching about this angle in the physicality can bring and can help us to interact with these fields so we can, throughout our intentions, help our planet. And throughout these fields, we can help the humanity, maybe, to be less sick in a way, of to see, as we can see the chaos that is all around. And just a point that I would like to bring, because it's very important. I think the equinoctial, the exact angle with the sun that we are from today, depending where, or tomorrow. Thank you, Alex. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jefferson. You brought up a very huge point, and I don't have it in this class, and it has to do with one of the things I talked about with respect to the plants. And every day, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Now, that's the way we perceive it, as the sun rising and the sun setting, but the reality is that the earth is rotating. So when you look at the motion through the solar system, we have to have a gravitational point and a magnetical point, and there has to be a way to go between here and there. So as we go to the outer edge, there has to be a slowing down, if you will, a turning, and then a speeding up, coming back. And as it comes to the midpoint, which is what you're talking about, that's a natural process. We see that every day at noon. And you know, wherever you are on this planet, wherever noon is when the sun is absolutely vertical overhead. In other words, equilibrium, just like what you described. I want to make a point and say this. Our spiritual understanding is not a calendar event. In other words, it doesn't happen on a specific date in the calendar, and it doesn't happen only on Sundays. That is what's wrong with our planet. Okay, looking after our planet is a daily thing. Looking after ourselves is a daily thing, and caring for our neighbors is a daily thing. In fact, it's not just daily; it's all day long. And this is our problem. So as we start to understand the rules, we start to attract what we want and repel what we don't need. But what we repel may be what someone else needs. And so that's part of the whole nature of attraction and repulsion. But the point is that if we go with this self-serving attitude into outer space, the universal community knows the difference, because they don't see the physical matter. They see the plasmatic reality. And if the plasmatic reality is a representation of the truth, and your truth is malevolent, then they will retreat and you will be lonely. And so that is not a calendar event, because there is no calendar in outer space. So there is a falsehood that is attached, and it's kind of been brought about through the study of archaeology and anthropology and history, and the perversion that comes from it as a result of trying to interpret matter state and predict what was the plasmatic substructure that created that matter state, which is only a manifestation of what was reality in physical representation of plasmatic reality. So this business of being able to direct energy, if you will, as a kind of healing force or a malevolent force, is really the wrong way to look at it. And why I say that is because the universe provides. The universe is a benevolent place. So it'll provide for you regardless of what day of the calendar it is. And it'll provide for you what you need, and the decision, the choice. So the decision that the universe makes is the universe provides. And the choice that you make is whether you accept it or reject it. And too many of us are telling the universe to shut up. And we say, well, okay, I'll listen to the universe on, the equilibrium, or I'll listen to the universe on Christmas. I'm going to be a bad person for 364 days of the year. And then on Christmas, I'm going to show how generous I am by showing how much I can give, because I've spent the rest of the year stealing. And we call that philanthropy. And that's not the way. The means does not justify, the means does justify the end, because the end is a representative of the means. But there's a difference between accepting support or accepting energy as opposed to stealing. So one of the easiest ways to steal is through deception. So we lie and cheat. The other way to steal is through force. So we do that most effectively through war. And this has been our history. So if we really look at our history, we can see that we've never learned our lessons. So now as knowledge seekers, we find out the truth. But, you know, is that going to make a difference? Well, the peace dome will make a difference, because when we bring these two tangent lines together and we see that the energy in the plasmatic state is stronger, then we need to think in those terms. And we do that because we are plasma beings. That's what we have to be aware of. And how do you practice that? Well, you don't do that through material state. It is done through your soul. And as we have discovered, there's a reason for the barriers. So we've been trying to break down these barriers, right? And why are these barriers here? Why are these barriers here, and who's putting up these barriers? And how come these barriers are still here after all these years? And so when you start to ask those questions, you find out that it's not a very popular answer. And so we continue to see this resistance. And we are the difference makers. So you have a universal right to look after your own health, and that is very important. And you don't have a universal right to abuse anybody else. You can give or not give. You have that opportunity, and that's how energy flows. And so whether that energy is manifested into a Magrav condition, or whether that energy is just flowing freely looking for a Magrav condition, you set up the pattern, you get the energy. That's what's important, and not the calendar. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, Alex. Thank you very much. It's very interesting the way that you look and you bring the points to wake up for many things. Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you.
Pleasure.
So the water creation doesn't, in theory, seem that difficult. What, H2O, 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen. But if you put a glass of water next to you and you're thirsty, are you going to transfer the fields? No, it has to go in through the mouth, and then the body copies those fields and produces the water. I wonder why it wouldn't just connect close by, even though you're needing water. Let's say you're thirsty, you've worked hard, you've perspired. The water doesn't seem to transfer itself, even if it's close to the body.
No,
without
it does.
actually
It
going
does,
in.
Mark. No,
Yes?
it does. It
Okay.
does. It's our observation. So it's our observation and our adaptation. We have adapted to, shall we say, 20% of our energy coming from the actual physical absorption of food and water. We're learning that that is not necessary. Can we do it though? This I can tell you. I'm not depending as much on food and water as I used to. So that's a trend. But you know, like a drug addict, can you stop cold turkey? so you know, we have lots of skills to learn, and each of us learns on a different basis. So we are now seeing and becoming aware of what the possibilities are, and we govern ourselves accordingly.
Yeah, and as I was thinking, the more CO2 in the atmosphere, the more clouds are created, correct? And it does provide a cooling, but I would also think it creates more moisture in the environment. But we are moving closer to the sun, so maybe those clouds would get burned away, so to speak. Because it seems to be getting warmer and not cooler. But the clouds should be, if we were creating clouds from the more CO2 in the atmosphere, it should be producing a shielding or a cooling effect, as I see it. But maybe being closer to the sun than we should be, it's not doing that.
So, Mark, the CO2 is an insulator. So the question, is it insulating us from the sun, or is it insulating us the energy that the earth provides?
I'd say it's insulating from the sun, because you create more on a cloudy day, it's cooler. No clouds, warmer. But again, this is just my interpretation. And I don't know that much.
If you dig down 8 or 10 feet into the ground, what is the temperature?
55 or whatever it is in Celsius.
Yeah, same as your speed limit. I know. Yeah. So where's that energy coming from?
I'd say it's from the core. It maintains a constant, yeah, like you said, 5 or 6 feet below, you have a constant 50, 55 degree temperature. So the heat has to be generated out of the core, not so much from the surface, because it maintains, whether it's winter or summer, on the surface, the temperature still maintains a 55.
Excellent answer to the question, Mark.
But I'd still like to grow a cup of water. We'll start off with a half a cup, and in a day or two, it's a cup. I don't know if anyone's done that. Dan referred to it. Jalal referred to the Kids Knowledge Seekers Workshop. I'm sure Mr. Kesh has done it. And we know it's a byproduct of breaking the plastic bond. So it can be done. I don't know if anyone's broken the plastic bond and released water. That may be another way to do it. There's probably many ways to do it. But it doesn't seem like it would be that difficult.
It also doesn't seem like it will be that difficult to generate peace on this planet.
And it's probably not. We just think it is. And we believe it is. So therefore, it doesn't manifest. Because we've all been conditioned, that's the way it is. That's the way it'll always be. It was that way when my grandfather lived. It was that way when my father lived. So I accept the idea it'll be that way when I live. But that's erroneous. And the change is here. The piece is already here. It just has to be polished up a bit.
Well, one of the other concepts that has to change is that a change in a paradigm shift, which is what we're talking about, is it takes a generation, and a generation is generally understood as 20 years. And the reason for that is because, you know, the older generation will die off and the new generation will come on. And if the new generation is not educated to the ways of the old generation, that knowledge becomes lost. And you know, this is what's happened to us in our societies. So this is why the teaching becomes so important, and we need more teachers. And we all teach in our own way, and we all can only teach what we know. But in the process of the teaching, not only do you exhibit what you know, but you learn at the same time. The truth of the matter is that anytime there's a teaching class, the teacher learns more than the students. because the teacher has to know what he's talking about. That's not to say that there aren't teachers out there who are faking it, but this is why the terminology is so important and the context is so important. You have to use the right terminology in the right context. But the fact of the matter is that we all go through these processes. So the adults in the family are generally the teachers for the children. Our society has taught us to abdicate those responsibilities, and we see the product of that, and it's not pretty. So I think we have to review that, and we see that the plasma science is giving us that capability. And the reason for it is because the plasma science is operating on a higher energy level. And so the teaching is more efficient and better because the truth and the soul are intimately aligned. And so those who are, shall we say, putting a barrier between the truth and their soul, they will pay the price, and it will be their own price that they will pay.
I think humanity can change quite rapidly, and we're going to see this through the new teachings. Dan has put in the chat, I noticed the water manifested near the Maghreb, but then I did not understand the interaction, and I have to look for video that I have made. So apparently Dan has seen the manifestation of water. Lissy has her hand up. Would you like to come in, Lissy? You don't have to raise your hand. You can just open your mic, anyone. Not all at the same time, obviously. Lissy?
Hello.
Yes, we
Thank
hear
you,
you.
Alex, and thank you, Mark, and thank you, everybody, for come here. I have a question. I am understand Alex is not a doctor. Okay, I understand, but my question is around near. Okay, I have one structure, pyramidal structure, and plasma dynamic structure. Take 5 points and 5 boxes with gains. I can move this in both directions, in right and left, and gravitational and magnetical too. But the movement depends for use, this is for health, no? The people sit in the center, the structure. Understand or not? My English is not perfect, so.
You're fine. Everything's good.
You are
Okay.
understanding, I'm not, but go ahead.
Okay. My question is the movement is depend the what condition, for what condition use or not? For example, do you use for diabetics, or do you use for any condition? It need gravitational movement or need a magnetical movement? Depend the condition or not? On both sides is better, but I have both sides.
So that's a difficult question to answer because it involves.
I understand you're not a doctor, but most important thing.
Right, we're
Most
not
important
doctors.
is understand. Thank
So
you.
I'm going to answer you in a plasmatic fashion. Okay, so you have two types
Yes,
of
please, thank
energy capture. One is through the binding and one is through the flowing. Okay, so if you have an energy capture and it's creating a binding situation, it means that energy has nowhere to go. So it becomes bound within, and it could cause discomfort. So the question then becomes, should you release that energy? And so by making it flowing. But if that energy is flowing, but it is disrupted in its flow pattern by something, then something has to improve the quality of the flowing. And so this becomes the challenge that health professionals are going to have to come up with, is to identify the type of energy containment that is involved, and to identify if it's a plasmatic or a physical energy a binding formation, and if it's emotional or the physical. So these are the skills that we have to learn, and then that's the only way that I want to answer the question, because I personally don't have the skills, you know, to do that. But you know, we know this: we are plasma beings. We are full of GANs. We know there are people who can heal by laying the hands on. So they themselves are able to facilitate the transfer energy. But one of the problems that healers have repeatedly is that they themselves become sick, because the way that they offer the transfer of energy is by taking the energy from you and absorbing it themselves. So the most important thing for these healers to understand, and the good healers will facilitate the transfer of energy without they themselves absorbing the energy. So in other words, they become catalytic converters. They convert your energy, but they themselves don't modify their own basis of energy. These are just skills that we all have to learn, and it's sometimes hard to discuss in these classes, but what I'm trying to do is to open up the awareness that this is possible, and it explains why it's possible. But you know, we have horizontal and vertical enhancement units coming, and we have other products that are coming. We have a research department. We have a medical department. These people are on the leading edge with respect to answering those questions. And so I'm going to have to defer to them, but I just want to point that out to you, that that technology is in our hands already. This is not wishful thinking. What is wishful thinking is that we can bring peace yesterday. That's what our overall wish is, and we can do this through the building up of the plasma dome and the peace dome. And the reason it is effective is because it's working at a higher energy state. And once that comes into play, a lot of the maladies, so a lot of the emotional constraints and maladies and bindings that we have will be, shall we say, plasmatically resolved on their own without interference from other outside sources. And the second thing is the furtherance of the binding, the extreme binding of energy in the matter state will also diminish, because once people get in touch with their souls and understand the ethos of the universe, these malevolent acts will not come into our, shall we say, into our kit, you know, into our kit of living. You know, we all have ways and means of how we live and survive, but stealing from others is not going to be part of that process, and that'll be automatic, because the soul is your friend and your soul will guide you. So we need to listen to this guidance as opposed to dominate this guidance. And so in that context, your question and Jefferson's questions are kind of similar, because we have a fallacy in thinking that we can dominate this energy. And that's not the purpose. The purpose is to open up, allow the universe to function properly. We're the ones that are having the problem here. It's our little tiny perfect world that is not very perfect, but it definitely is tiny. So if we want to exchange with the rest of the universe, they already know this. Vertical people already know this, right? Amoebas know this. Amino acids know this. Protoplasm knows this. It's just us sophisticated humans, you know, we have this problem. And the plasma science is exposing this problem in our face. And it's not a bad thing. It's overdue. So we're gonna need to listen to our souls, because our soul is our guidance and it will never let you down.
And that's one of the beauties of the universal unit. It balances the body perfectly, or pretty perfectly at the point of conception, when you're in pretty perfect balance, but it also deals with the emotions. So many of us are trying to look at the matter state, a diabetic or whatever, other problems, but we and the doctors rarely look at the emotional balance. And again, we've been taught that if you do not get the emotions in balance, the physicality will manifest it even stronger. It may take care of it for a while, but then the emotions will come back and manifest a cancer or another condition, even in a stronger way.
Mike, who was the person who asked the question? This is Aza.
I think it was Lissy.
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
I-
may I add something to this to make it? I don't know. I'm gonna go different direction. Maybe she understand, or maybe I don't get it right. But if you look at everything from every single cell in your body, you have both of the magnetic or gravitational. And then if a child is born, say the child is in perfect condition, there is no parental genetic or evolutionary thing going on, and the child is born as perfect. So everything in that system works beautifully, because the body is made because the creator himself is in it. So it's constantly, actually, Mr. Cash talked about the whole body is a nuclear reactor. If we go back to the system itself, if I make an example of it, Mr. Cash was talking about the pituitary gland, parathyroid gland. So say somebody's kidney is not functioning well, or somebody's liver is not functioning well, somebody's large colon is not functioning well. The question is why? Because the body is worked magnificently. The way the body works, say you're talking about the parathyroid gland, because the body always transmute element. It doesn't work the way we learn in the university, like the material goes to the blood system, goes here, because if you want to go to that route, every single minute, billions of interaction is happening in the body. How the body can go through that blood system, because the blood is emotion, the lymph is the matter state, and then that gland is attached to the neural system. The neural system constantly working, and the body has packages of elements. So it goes right away to those packages elements. Even if you don't, Mr. Cash made the example of Eskimos, that Eskimos, they don't have a variety of anything, like they just have fish, because that's all they have. So how is the body make, say, calcium or potassium or whatever is in the minerals that is in a vegetable and fruit, which they don't see maybe 12 of the 13 months, 10 months of the year. So the body knows where to go. For example, it goes to the package of, say, it says it has potassium and zinc. It takes that, transmute it to calcium. So it takes it to the right element. So now somebody's kidney is not functioning. So the question is, the blood is emotion, we have the lymph, and we have a nervous system. These three, something is happening that is not allowing this to function. So the person has to go back to himself or herself, see what is it in an emotional level that I do, or what I do, what are my thoughts or what are my emotions, where is it that I started this journey? What is my story? If you sit and listen to everybody, everybody has a story. Every single human being has a story. But a human being should not have a story. Human being was put on this planet to just roam this planet and enjoy this planet. There's no stories. But we create a story. I don't know how someplace in our journey we just got caught up in entanglement of other situations and stuff, but there's no story. You just go through life as it is, and just whatever shows up, you just take care of it. But if you look at everybody, I can Because right now, when I look at people, people tell me, my kidney is not working or something, I can't go to the bathroom, I'm constipated. I can write the way they talk. They should be constipated. They should be kidney problem. There should be this problem because it's right in the face. Because everything is in our body. Everything is in our emotion. Everything is in our stories. So if you go back to that person, because human, in my opinion, human started to have mental diarrhea. We just throw out everything that is not necessary in the world, which is not necessary. But we go back to understanding who we are instead of reaching out, because human made it, wanted to have it easy. Just look, the same way I see it in dentistry, people do whatever they want. They come and just say, fix me. They think it's just a piece of machinery. Because if you have a Mercedes Benz, take it to your mechanic, says, make it apart, all the parts apart, and tomorrow morning put it back together. You can go get your Mercedes. But if you have a dog, take it to your butcher and say, okay, chop this dog up, and then tomorrow just give my dog back. You can get your dog back. Because human being, something in it, which is the innate in it, which is very magnificently done by the creator, which is the creator himself. And the only thing is we don't know how to use this magnificent machinery. And actually the whole notion, even talking about water, food, any of these things, these are something we can easily get from our environment. We don't even have to make them. You just make it accessible to your body and get it, because the monks, the sadhus in Tibet, they're doing it for 1,000 years. They're sitting in a -50 degree naked. They're warm. They sit in a +100 degree sun. They're fine. They sit there without any food or thing. They found, because they're doing it for 1,000 years. So they did certain things. They have the knowledge, but this is the knowledge we have to understand. How is this system works? And if we can make it work, the body constantly gives you what you need without even going, we go try to get vitamin or this and that. The body constantly gives you what you need. The only thing is, are we allowing it? Are we open to it? There's something someone wrote in talking about peace. Somebody wrote the Chinese, which was translated. I'd like to read it for you, if you allow me. I'm gonna find it. This is very interesting in terms of the world peace we're talking about. Okay, here it goes. It says, life is not happening to you. It is happening, it is responding to you. Life is a game. It's like every kind of game with certain rules and elastic scales. When we have been playing this game from morning to night, so we have to learn to understand the rules and the scales of the game to make it more appropriate. Better, naturally, more fun. 1, do not condemn or curse anyone or anything except words or even in your thoughts. Instead, we need to be more blessed and be thankful. Even if someone or something at the moment seems to be a big problem or even has caused trouble, harm, choose your thoughts carefully, because everything in the world cannot be hidden. And whatever is produced by you shall be brought back to you again like a rotating conveyor belt. And after a round, it shall return to its place. What you give out, you will come back to yourself, whatever it is. So be mindful of what you think, what you say, and what you do. The second, whatever you desire, first truly believe and feel that you have acquired it. Then you will be able to achieve it. The requisition of non-interference and the infringement of the liberal consciousness of the others will not have a counter effect on it. Explore your imagination to the fullest of your own free consciousness and remain firmly on the feeling of satisfaction, happiness, achievements, and so on. You have to be full of emotion and feel it with a taste that do not imagine how things will happen, how to achieve it, much less bother to appreciate and plan, because it will cause a lot of synchronization to universe the interferences. This is one of the essence of the mind and mind in the law of the universe. You are not just the main character in this game of life, but the only one. The player has no one but you. There is no competitors, there is no opponent, there is no enemies, only yourself. My dear, your world is real. Everything comes from yourself and everything reflects your thoughts and your perception of yourself too. It is like standing in a huge crystal mirror mirror hall, where all the mirrors are reversed by yourself, even though each one looks different. It is really you from all sides of the inside, and the reflection of you. So be clearly aware of what you're thinking, because it is you self-expression. You're directed to the game of life. The law of universe, everything that surrounds you is serving you, is serving your thoughts, what you are, who you are. All things in life or not, even a book comes to witness your state of mind. The rule of the game of life is you are the dominant, the creator of your own world, the one Lord, the only God. Everything else comes to serve. Your thoughts, whatever you can understand this law or not, your consciousness, subconsciousness, expressive consciousness, unconscious, you, conscious you is there, operating, creating your life. Life is a game and you are the game itself, no one else. Everything that happens on the inside will gain a relative experience on the outside. Who you are, what you are, try to get within. Know the essence of your true self. May more people regain my strengths and become happy players. Somebody in China wrote this, and I thought it was very interesting to say it.
Thank you so much, Azar. That's a wonderful presentation that you made there. And we don't say it often enough. We really appreciate your contributions to the whole foundation. Thank you.
It wasn't my presentation. It was somebody who wrote it on Facebook. I read it. It was a Chinese guy, Chinese master.
Yeah, but you were there, right?
What do you mean I was there? You mean?
Well, I wasn't there.
Okay, that's fine.
Right? So you were there.
Yeah, I just read it because it's
You are the chosen one.
Yeah, because it resonated with me so much. So I said, this is amazing. You know, this guy wrote this.
Yeah, and did you read it at a more appropriate time than just now?
I think so, because I was thinking, you know, we were talking about the peace, and you know, the funny thing is, a lot of time we think about peace, but at the same time, suddenly, because it has happened to me before, like many years ago, because I was always into world humanitarian, this and that, but then at the same time, suddenly you see I'm angry. When I look back into my past, I say, my God, who was that person? Because it's so funny when you see people talk about peace, but at the same time, their behavior is not coming from the peace. So if we work on ourselves in a way that get to know ourselves, actually, I think this, when you little by little get a little bit of essence of your soul, it's amazing how the soul is infinite, and just beyond your imagination is a kindness and grace and compassion, and you cannot beat that. I mean, once in a while it happens to me that I get a glimpse of that, and I can sit like that forever, because you don't want to lose it. Yeah, just you don't care about anything else. It's just magnificent. It's just on and off. But that soul, the most magnificent thing can anybody. I mean, I don't know how we can even grasp the material world and don't let go, and we left the soul with that magnificent, with that that you cannot even describe it, and don't want to reach for that. And it really, one of the things I noticed observing people, we need a lot of education, a lot of understanding of people, and be there for people, because people who don't understand it, instead of beating them up with our words, or rejecting them, or condemning them, or they don't understand. It just they need a lot of support. These people, a lot of understanding for them to open up. It's just like imagine you have a little seed, but you beat up the seed and you say, why don't you flower? But if you just put it in a little soil and water it and put the manure and put it in the sun, the seed grows. And that's how I see people. that we need to understand them, and just like that seed, put them in a right condition and they grow themselves.
Hello again, Mr. Alex. I have two kind of question. One is related to this picture. I have seen emotion of presence and also soul of present. And I'd like to understand if this third soul is like in a star formation, the two souls interact and can create another soul, soul of present, and emotion of presence is also related with this interaction, but is an interaction of emotion, not of soul. So we have interaction of soul, and we have soul of present, and interaction of emotions, and we have emotion of presence. And did I understood well?
You understood it well insofar as a magnetical gravitational field does have an invitation for a soul. I can't answer your question totally, except to say this. I know that when a man and woman get together, a child is formed. And so what we're looking at is an opportunity, instead of doing this in the physical state, to do this in the plasma state. So this is a new opportunity, but basically when two forces come together, they create another. So that's a fundamental reality. And then once there is a maggrav situation, in other words, is a balance between the magnetical gravitational field forces, that provides an invitation for a soul to come in. We have not been able to get out of this earthbound condition. That is why the new space science is so exciting, because what we know is such a tiny portion. It's definitely proportional to our tiny perfect little universe, which is just this earth. So we have to lift up our horizons to learn these new subjects. And only within the last couple of months has this teaching gone into that direction, and has put pressure on all of us as students and as teachers to understand the answer, the true answer to your question there. What we know, and as Azar has so eloquently stated, that our physical reality is a manifestation of our plasmatic interpretation of our plasmatic reality. So this, when we're dealing with an emotional presence, this is the now, the in-between point between the past and the future. Or as Jefferson brought a point, this is our point of equilibrium. But it is not a static equilibrium, because energy is in motion and is always in motion. Where is it going? And that becomes predetermined by the magnetical or gravitational attraction, which is the law of attraction. So this is, in one way, it's difficult to predict, except for the fact that we realize now that we are the creators of our own creation. We are the co-creators. So there's creation, procreation, co-creation. And, you know, we're part of that whole process. So now we can look at and understand we were born, and we can understand what happened to us to be born. And we can open up that discussion. That is where the new teaching is going. So I thank you for your question, because now you're pointing us in the beautiful direction of the bountiful knowledge that is on our doorstep. And we will all be exploring that together.
And you're saying where the
Thank you very much.
new teaching is going. We've noticed there was an election this week in Iran, and the leading candidate had an overwhelming victory, it appears. I've read a few things in the, let's say, American press or the world press, but I was wondering if Azar, who probably reads Farsi well, if she would make any comment. We can't talk about medical conditions, but I hope we can talk about political conditions. Would you like to
Mark,
make-
I really don't know anything about
Okay.
it.
I think there were 28 million votes cast and the leading candidate received over 17 million of those votes. So he had an overwhelming, I think the second candidate only received maybe 3 million votes. So there was an
Because I don't know,
overwhelming.
I don't know the guy really. He's new to me.
And this is what Mr. Kesh has been waiting for, the turnover of the leadership there so he can begin his work, bringing these teachings from Tehran to the entire world. And I think that has happened this week. And I just thought you may want to make a comment, but that's fine. At least the change has happened. And now we await the new teacher.
I can figure it out and tell you later, but I don't know anything now.
Okay, great.
I will say something very quick. Sorry, it's Kay.
Yes, we hear you, Kay.
Oh, great. Good evening to everyone. Something very quick. I think Mr. Kesh is quite pleased, or would be quite pleased, that Mr. Raisi is the new president. He's part of the group which are the hardliners, and they are more in tune and in line with the leaders and the Sepah of Iran. Most of our presidents of the previous or past governments, they were all moderate, and they were all working for themselves rather than for the nation. So nationalism was the last thing in their mind. But this new guy, he's part of a new movement whereby nationalism will be on the agenda, and looking after people would be their main focus. And I have a feeling, as Mr. Kesh has mentioned before, bringing the science at the top of the focus point will be their first move. And as leader has always throughout all sorts of governments in the past has always mentioned that we need to look inwards, look into the youth and what they can produce for the country in terms of knowledge and science. Now the opportunity, I think, has presented itself with this new presidential setup, and the science will be at forefront of everything in Iran. And hopefully things will start rolling the way Mr. Kesh has predicted, and to a certain extent the way Iranian nation has been waiting for, because they have really been sucked dry through internal forces as well as external forces, sanctions and so forth. And those people inside who has maximized their pockets through these sanctions and enabled the sanctions and facilitated the sanction by the foreign forces. So yeah, Mr. Raisi is, he was in the past, in the previous government, he was the head of the judicial system, I've forgotten his name, the head of the legal system in Iran. So he's known in the politics, and a lot of people actually used to think why he was the head of the judicial system and how comes all these people has embezzled so much money out of the country, billions and billions of dollars. But we wait and see. I have a feeling he will be pushing Iran in the right direction, as he's in the same page as the leader. That's little thing that I know about it so far. I'm not very good at the internal politics in Iran, unfortunately. But I think the future is bright. There is a nice light at the bottom of the tunnel, and it will get brighter and brighter as time goes by. Thank you.
Yes, and I was on another website this week where I heard nothing to do with the Keshe Foundation per se, but the gentleman said that Iran was the most peaceful country on this planet. I think he said from 1775, they've never gone outside their borders to create any disturbances other than maybe to defend themselves in the Iran-Iraq situation, which was created there. But it was pleasing to hear that some people are aware of the peaceful nature of Iran, as opposed to what we've heard so much demonization and this and that. If you ask the man on the street, he would make a negative comment probably about it or be fearful of them. But there are many that are aware that Iran is a very peaceful nation and has not gone to war outside their borders or any wars of aggression.
Yeah, that's definitely, obviously mainstream media had to suppress all that information in order to create the fear and sell the billions and billions of dollars of weapons that they have sold to the Arab Sheikhdom in the Persian Gulf and the surrounding areas by demonizing Iran and making them a massive boogeyman. Apart from that, yes, you're right, Iran hasn't been involved in any sort of war apart from self-defense. And not only has done that, but also with the new revolution, which has happened 40 years ago, they have propped up and supported what you call a resistance group, starting from Lebanon to Palestine and to even Iraq, which was once upon Saddam Hussein was our enemy under the behest of the West. They attacked Iran, but still Iran helped Iraq and made America to leave Iraq after the first Persian Gulf war. And they came back in again under the auspicious guise of beating Daesh and ISIS, which was their own instrumental black soldiers or foot soldiers that they put it there in order to conquer Syria and Iraq. And Iran has helped them all. Even right now, just recently, Saudi Arabia eventually came to some sort of peace, offering quite a lot of $1 billion to Yemenis, and trying to go through peace process through Oman. And that's again help from Iran. So not only Iran didn't attack any countries, but at the moment, quite a few countries has been helped by Iran in order to stand against the aggression and the occupiers to be, so to speak. And the first thing one really needs to look into, if one was to look a little bit deeper, as Mr. Keshe said, Iran has had, as Mr. Keshe has developed this plasma technology in the form of the military. Since 2008, 2009, Iran has had this plasma technology, and in 2011, Iran has brought down the RQ-170. With this technology, Iran has never ever wielded its almighty power of plasma onto any country, none whatsoever, as opposed to Western country or America in particular, with their military superior. They have been attacking every country in the world. Just imagine if America had this plasma technology that Mr. Keshe has developed, what they would have done. But Iran has never done that, and it has waited until at the right time, which we see to be now, in order to bring peace. And it has never abused the superior power that it has in possession. That itself says a lot about the leadership of Iran. Just my thought.
And I think once the teaching starts and the technology starts to come out of here, and people are so amazed with the technology and the advancements that we weren't aware of, it's going to question them to think quite a bit about what they've been told about certain things. And hopefully it'll allow us to keep more of an open mind about things we hear or things that are reported.
We do have short memories though, but the power of the media is such that we get easily brainwashed. They know how to manipulate and change the subject and cover it up and do a whitewash and hoodwink everyone. So things doesn't come out so obvious. Some people may ask questions and they can put two and two together, and all those things that they were talking about Iran, it was just nonsense. And now look what's happening. But you know, they wouldn't just say, look, well, what we've done and what is happening now. They wouldn't. They would just carry on and cover it up and just smoothly transition from one point to from one pole to another pole, if that was to happen, and I'm hoping it will. So the world will really go to the same direction as where USA will go. If USA will to switch the pole and come towards the world peace and join hand with Iran and, you know, China and Russia and the rest of the world will follow very easy. And nobody, as Mr. Kash has always said, we're not here to say, look, we have done the best and you've done the worst. We just want the world peace to just start and carry on. Nobody's going to point fingers at anybody. What's past is water under the bridge. But you would be sure mass media will be covering lots of things up and very smoothly make people believe of the present time, and the past time will never be questioned or compared. But at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want world peace. It doesn't matter how we get it. And hopefully we will. And we shall. God bless.
Thank you, Kay. Yes, there's so many deceptions. I was thinking of what Malcolm X said when he became a Muslim, and then he went to Mecca, and he said, I ate out of the same bowl and I drank out of the same cup for 7 days, along with blonde-haired and blue-eyed Muslims. And he said, I didn't even know they existed. So even a smart man like that, who got the longest standing ovation in the British debating hall, was fooled. And so I think a lot of truths that we think are truths are going to be opened up to make us see that what we thought we knew, we didn't really know. And that's the beauty of the television and the teaching that will be proceeding from Linz or from Austria and from Tehran especially. So we'll be able to thank that country rather than to have bad thoughts, as has been put in our minds about the media, that they're a threat and this and that. No, they're going to be sharing with all the nations on this planet. And this is going to be such a beautiful uniting of the languages and the nations. Mr. Kesh, I saw your mic open a couple times. Would you like to come in, or maybe you're moving around?
Good evening. And no, it's just the comment and the questions you asked. The Iran foreign policy is well the backbone of our work, as we know, the negotiation in Vienna will carry on the same with the instruction of President Biden, that they want to push ahead before the handover and transfer of power on the 12th of what we call just about 2nd, 3rd of August. And we expect the Iran national policy in respect to the work will be totally on a new science and technology basis, and we'll see. Setting agenda is very difficult at this moment of time for those who just taken office in less than 24 hours. So during the transition, it's very much like in the United States. you elect a president in November and he moves in office on 20th of January. In Iran, the president elected on the 18th. He will move into office on 12th or what we call 3rd of August. So we are in transition time, and Keshe Foundation has a lot to say in the future of the foreign policy regarding the science and especially the negotiations of 5+1. And we keep very close our work with the way we are doing it and what we see, and the new administration will be very much on the basis of new technology and creation of new jobs, and understanding of the new science and technologies and what can be created through it. Fundamentally, as we said, Iran in 1972 had 95% income on oil and 5% on pistachio and nuts, more or less. Today in 2021, Iran relies less than 25% of its income on oil and 75% on petrochemicals, gas exploration, and high-tech medical systems, which is exported out of Iran. Most of the high-tech systems you see in Germany and Western Europe are manufactured in Iran. And now one of the biggest problems is to increase the oil revenue to less than 10% of national income, GDP. And this has been possible through one-way track of large investments in what we call petrochemicals and pharmaceutical. Iran is extremely advanced in pharmaceutical and other aspects of what we call industrial systems. And now we will see large changes, hopefully, into industrialization, and new space technology in Iran will take hold. Essentially, we will scrap 5+1 in the next few weeks if things go according to plan. Scrapping it by literally leaving Mr. Nazif to be the last negotiator, telling no one on the table to negotiate in a way unless it's done the way we want it. Then we'll see how the foreign policy takes shape. Because if we allow the 5+1, the state, Iran will be subordinate, and Iran will be a slave to the West, what to do what they say. And we cannot accept this anymore. There are a number of nationals will listen to that tonight, and we make a very clear indication now that the regime has changed. We walk away from 5+1, or very temporarily we stick to it till we revamp the whole of Iran from inside. Unless something goes drastically wrong, which we do not think so. We have not hopes. We see 5+1. We negotiated to bring new technologies. We see it as a way of colonization and slavery, and Iran will resist it from now on. Mr. Nazif can negotiate whatever he likes in the West. But we change direction totally through science and technology. I think this answers a lot of people who were waiting to see a clear line from Iran foreign policy. But we have to wait and see if the present regime changes direction in a different way, and the elected regime will change differently.
Will they be increasing their production in agriculture, or will they be selling any of your technology to the other nations, maybe inexpensively?
We will announce in a coming time. There is a plan. We have already negotiated the plan, and there is a. But that is the job of the union leaders to announce, not from this position. Something totally different, which will be in line with what we've been teaching. As many of you are aware, and some of you have already entered in the 21st of June, and we know the significance of 21st of June, which is today now in many nations, and will be for most of us in the next few hours. We enter the summer season, summer cycle, and today will be the longest day of the year. And we call it the day of light, the time of light. This is the presence of the Ahura Mazda, as we call it, and the 21st of December, which matches in a way, it's been adjusted to 25th of December, you call Christmas, is the birth of Mitra. And there is a cycle of change which happens, and it will happen in this cycle in the next 6 months, where the cycle of light meets cycle of what we call the night. The longest night belongs to Mitra, and the longest day, the day of light, belongs to Harvaz, or what we call the Creator. But something in the line of our work, which is running in the Keshe Foundation in the background, we brought a lot of thinking about Mitra and what Mitra means. And one of the most important things that has been kept away from public domain, but it is in the background of the public domain, is that how much Christianity is Mitraism, and how much Christianity, the way we know as the Catholic version, is Mitraism under the name of Catholicism. The center of Catholic Church sits to be the Vatican. But does anybody know why? What's the reason that what we call Vatican as a city, Vatican as a place of the worship in center of Italy has been created? Why couldn't they choose somewhere else? Napoli, Milano, or anybody else in the world? Does any of you have ever checked or understand why what we call St. Peter's Basilica has become the center of the Catholic Church is where it is? And this opens up to close what we call the claim of Vatican as a religion, as a Christianity. If you look at the historical documents, underneath the St. Peter's Basilica, the center of Catholic Church, was and today is Temple of Mitra. One of the first temples made by the Roman soldiers outside Europe is where St. Peter's Basilica was the center of Catholic churches. And this temple, known as Mithraism, still exists under the Vatican. And all the Catholic priests of the highest order swear to it. There are a number of Mithraism temples are in Rome, and all of them are covered by the holy buildings of Catholic Church. In a way, we have seen in the past, they built mosques where the churches were, and they built temples over the old temples. And in a way, a lot of mysticism that you carry in Christianity, especially in Catholic Church, comes from Mithraism. Even this is my blood, this is my body. The blood, you call it blood, comes traditionally from a plant extract in the present, all the time, called Soma, S-O-M-A. Christ never gave his blood, and Christ never gave his body. This is what came through the Zoroastrian belief and the past of the belief, which became conversion of Zoroastrianism and in a way Mithraism. Because in the West they couldn't create this extract which was supposed to give life and energy. In Italy there was a lot of wine. They changed it to wine. The same with the body and the bread. And in a way, Christianity, the way you call it, is Mithraism westernized. And in so many ways, is there a room for Catholic Church and Christianity the way it's being promoted? Leaves a big question mark. Don't take my word for it. Search within the archives of Christian Catholic Church. In so many ways, we are about to change for people to understand the truth. As was said, Mitra is amongst us. And we will change the course by her birthday. But we have to understand the extent of why we even bring new technologies and sciences from random Mitra. To bring the change. That's her wish, that's her command in what we call for the change. And what is interesting is how many of you, knowing the truth that there was never a body and there was never blood, will still carry on believing. It's easier for you to call yourself Mithraism or Zoroastrians than Christians, because you're dealing with very much a lot of truth which has just been converted, Europeanized for European. The reason this temple was made in Rome was that as Romans were conquering more and more, the soldiers were away from the temples that they believed in. And reaching Iran, the military, the soldiers, found out they can carry something inside them with a belief of God or Mitra, that they didn't need a temple. They needed a statue to go to. And they made these temples between them because it gave them invisible force energy. And in so many ways, you will come to understand even why the Christ was called the Son of God, and how the virgin birth came to be. And word by word, as we said in the past, matches the work of Mitra, being the light, being the essence of creation, and the cycle of what we call on earth, the cycle of light, which is today, until the cycle of Mitra, which is 21st of December, beginning of the winter. The changes will be drastic in this time, in this cycle. And it's good for you who always believed in different ways and paths to understand the truth about what is being kept away from public domain. You go to Vatican and pray, but you actually pray over a temple of Mitra. That was the only compromise the Roman emperors could give to their soldiers, that they became more followers of Mitra. And there were those who heard and were around the time and work of Christians in the Middle East. As the soldiers who came from Far East of East Asia came with Mitra, and the soldiers coming from Palestine came with Christ. And for an emperor to be able to still run the nation was a good compromise between the two soldiers, to do armies, to keep the nation together. And this is how the present Catholic Church, the present Christianity was born. This we put on the table because in the coming time, there shall be no Pope. As the truth about the way Christianity said is through the life of Mitra. And in a very short time, then many of you can consider the Vatican will be empty of people. If you remember years ago in teachings I said, we return the stones of Vatican back to the Colosseum. And we are about to start that process. Where there is nothing but the conscience of man in this space. In a way, we do not carry Mitra belief of becoming stronger through our heart, but we carry the essence of the Creator through our soul, which changes the course of humanity. And many of you will see the change. Even the election of the clergy in Iran is one of the reasons. We have a bigger plan to create peace and prosperity on this planet than a few different versions of covering of the hat and the head. But in essence, all the same. But if any of you decides to make that change and to bring that change, you all have the capability to do it for your soul. As the knowledge is there and it's been given, and it's for the understanding to bring it about. And today is the day of light. That's the longest time, longest day, but with the significance that everything has been sent in the sequence of change. 2021. And we usually have seen completion in sequence of numbers like this. 1918. When we see 1920, we have seen on the reverse of numbers disasters, and on the addition of numbers prosperity and big changes. And it's interesting to see how many people, when they know, they all have been Mitra followers in the name of Catholic Church. Birth of Mitra is celebrated as Christmas. The 12 disciples, as Mitra had. Mitra was a light. That's why she was the Virgin, from the Virgin Mother. As the light in essence has no mother but the Creator. And many, many other things which related to Mitra, which is named Christianity. And this puts a very big question mark that how much of what we know about Christ is actually about him. And today is the day of the Creator, 21st of June. (2021), and the first day of the 21st appearance of the Creator is 22. The total number is 9. It's the completion of the cycle. It will be very interesting to see what is about to come and how well we will understand the changes which started as of today. But look, how many of you believed in the Catholic Church, and through it, you're all follow Mitra. And then you understand why everything will start working now that every other path has been cleared for the change to start. Thank you very much.
Good day, Mr. Kesh. You have answered two huge questions that I've had for the longest period of time. And one was the origin of the St. John's Hospitalier. And the other was the ownership of the Vatican of the Royal Archaeological Society. So the one has to do with the militarization of the medical community, and the other has to do with the obfuscation of history. Thank you so much.
Can you explain?
Well, why is the answer? And so the question is, someone is obscuring history, and you've just unearthed a significant portion of this history. And the thing is that history has been suppressed by the very people that you just talked about. The other aspect is that in the medical community, there are two schools of thought, virology and bacteriology, and the two don't meet. And bacteriology is obviously something that is in the matter state, and the virology is something that's in the plasma state. And right now, we're having a huge upheaval in North America here, because people are starting to figure out that the lies have been overwhelming, and the narrative is being contrived. On Thursday, the 17th, we had a major press release coming from the government with respect to censorship. And people are starting to figure out that many of the medical doctors are being, well, they're being attacked, both verbally and systemically. And so disclosure of information and the exchange of knowledge and discussion of scientific revelations is being forbidden. And one of the things that has been forbidden in Canada is the somatoscope, which is a microscope that can see 125,000 magnification as compared to 1,200 magnification of the electron microscope. And what it can also see is the living blood culture, as opposed to a photograph of a blood specimen. And in it discloses the what Gaston Naessens, who is the French scientist who, shall we say, created the somatoscope, and he was run out of France, and he's come to Canada, and this particular microscope is illegal. And the reason it's illegal is because it shows the divide between the virology departments and the bacteriology departments. And it shows the actual creation of somatids, which are tiny bodies. And these tiny bodies actually come from the hemoglobin, and it's clearly visible. And how they come and how they manifest is clearly visible. And the life cycle of the creation of the somatids and how they migrate to spores and double spores, which is the third dimension, and they cycle back to more somatids and more spores and more double spores, which is the essence of the cellular multiplication through division. It's fantastic what you just said. Thank you so much.
Hello, Mr. Kish. My intuition today, before starting our meeting, put me to write a poem for Mitra about peace, love, and light. And I did it in few minutes, like this. Maybe she helped me to write. She was my muse, my inspiration. I didn't know. I didn't realize it in a logical way, but at intuitive level, in plasmatic level, I was on the same assentiment with you. As usual, we communicate at the soul level as many knowledge seekers with you. Yeah, thanks.
You know, Mr. Kesh, I had a shocking experience. I was at the library, and I was shocked to find that well, we all know about encyclopedia. I was shocked to find that there's a Catholic encyclopedia. You know, I tried to figure out what the difference was, and it was shocking to see that there were elements in the Catholic encyclopedia that weren't in the regular encyclopedia. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange. And then I found out that the regular encyclopedia is a manifestation physically of a religious organization. And obviously the Catholic encyclopedia is the same way. And out of curiosity, I thought, well, I wonder if there's a Jewish encyclopedia or a Muslim's encyclopedia. And yeah, that I didn't find. I don't know, because I'm in Canada. These encyclopedias actually may exist, and would they be as different? But you know, to think that there are two encyclopedias, both controlled by religious organizations, so the dissemination of that information is controlled from a religious perspective. Just it was a shocking experience, and this is where I was looking at the creation of the Hospitalier, who were the actual, shall we say, they had to follow the Crusades, because that's one of the problems of when you're at war, you can have a lot of injuries. And so through the war, we discovered how to, well, many of the workings of the human body, and you know, how to discover how to take care of the human body, bringing it back from extreme conditions. But so the medical community was derived from the military escapades of the Crusades, which really, in essence, when you look at it, the whole battle was around the Middle East. Anyway, I think it was a terrible part of our history, and it was so sad, except for the many things that we learned as a result of it. I think one of the things we've learned is the pointlessness of military activity, except for the defense of one's nation, and beyond the defense of one's nation, the defense against what? An aggression of another nation. And so we see that the aggression is actually the pointless part, and that's why peace is so important. But ultimately, what is being obfuscated in history is how important the ethos of the universe comes into play, because critically, the plasma field forces are working on a higher level, on a soul level. And if we disobey the universal laws, the plasma energy will not work for us. And that lesson has been learned. So avoidance of elevating to the plasma level has been kind of the modus operandi of the way we run our planet here. And that has to cease, because, as I say, our tiny perfect world is definitely tiny. Thank you so much.
And I had always wondered, I had read that there were actually female popes, maybe centuries or more ago. And now it seems, with that explanation Mr. Kesh gave, that maybe Mitraism was trying to reassert itself over the Catholicism. I don't know if anyone had heard there were female popes at one time. And it just made me think maybe that was a way of them trying to take back Mitraism.
From what I understand, it could be that's why all the kings tried to wear long hair and to mimic that feminine energy also, from what I've read.
So I think we'll be having some open and frank discussions with Mr. Kesh as time goes on, and some of these unanswered questions are, as it says, what has been hidden will be revealed. So I think there's a lot to be revealed, but very interesting. They built on top of the Temple of Mitra, which we've seen in many different places in the world as well, by trying to cover it up or physically cover it up.
Yeah, Mark, you know that the Holy Grail is the bastardization of the Sang Real, which is the holy blood. I want to thank everybody for attending today's class. I'm going to sign off and pass it over to you, Mark. This has been the North American Foundation team meeting, and we're going through a new phase. It's about time. And thank you so much for the opportunity to make the presentation today. Please carry on, Mark.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex, for being part of this, and thank everyone for being here. We all add to the fields of the meeting just by your presence. And I see a few more are coming in. We want to thank everyone for being here and sharing knowledge and educating ourselves so that we can share the knowledge that's being conveyed to us through Mr. Kesh and through his technology to the others, because they're wandering around this world from one place to another, trying to find something that they can attach to or that has meaning or can satisfy their soul. And so we're very fortunate to be here and to be part of this. And as we know, we didn't bring ourselves here, our souls brought us here. And it's great to be learning much more about the soul, and that it doesn't need to be saved, and that it's already an eternal being. And we want to go out and create a new cycle that's correct. I guess there's a lot of cycles that have been created, apparently, where things are not correct. And maybe these are some of the places we will go and visit and try to bring them back into some sort of balance or unification through this knowledge. And I don't know if we'll be spending thousands of years in each location or how it'll work, but there's a beautiful future planned, and we're part of the creation process. So I'm glad I can be part of it, and I'm glad you can be part of it as well, as we work with the Creator to unify the universe and the Unicos. So thank you. Would anyone else like to speak or ask a question or share anything? Okay, we're coming up to midnight in Europe, I believe. And of course, with the knowledge Mr. Kesh carries, he can go on for days or weeks or months, I'm sure, and explain to us many of the things we thought we knew or thought was correct. But as we start to unravel this whole history of this planet, we're going to find out many other things, as we did with the stones from the Colosseum were used to build the Vatican, and now they'll be returned. And it's beautiful to be around somebody that carries this sort of knowledge and understanding. And of course, if I was walking on this planet for thousands of years, I would do the same as well. Interesting to know about the summer solstice and the winter solstice, as they refer to it, the longest day and the shortest day. I didn't quite get the 9 that was adding up. I can see 2 and 1 make 3, and then the year 21 makes 3. Where does the other 3 come from? Or was it 8? I thought it was 9. It is the 6th month. Or maybe we'll just take 6 plus 3 to make the 9.
June 21st, 6/21.
Because I know when we went to 3/21/21, that added to 9. And that was the start of the new cycle, or the beginning, or the completion. But that's fine.
And Mark, I think is 6 is June, and then 21 is 2 plus 1 is 3, and 3 plus 6 is 9. I think that's
Gotcha.
it.
Okay. Yes, there's many events that have transpired on this planet that we don't seem to know about, but I guess nothing is hidden from the soul. And if we go into our soul, we will learn more. I don't know if all this knowledge, maybe the plasma knowledge is contained, but I don't know about all the matter state knowledge. But it is very interesting to hear, as Mr. Kesh has told us, about the construction of pyramids and many, many, just basically scratching the surface on a lot of these things we've all wondered about. And many men and women have wondered about these things for their whole lives and never were able to hear any of the explanations we even heard today. So we want to thank Mr. Kesh for being part of this and being with us. Anyone else would like to add to the knowledge or share some knowledge?